Thank you so much for watching. Before we get into it today, please make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, follow me on Instagram at felix.levine, and if you have something to say, please leave a comment. Now let's get into it. And we're live. I'm here with Brendan Fitzgerald. I am super excited to have you on my show. When I first reached out and you said yes, I was stoked. So thank you for taking the time today. It really means a lot.
Yeah, thanks, Felix. I love your setup, man. When I looked into your stuff, it's like I need to get some of that sound wall stuff. Like, man, you got it going.
I got a little studio here in Brooklyn. Shout out to Josh and Brooklyn Podcasting Studio. It's a great little setup. But I heard you upgrade a little bit the setup too. I think I saw on some.
Yeah. So I can show you.
Show it to me.
So I used to just sit in front of guitars.
Okay.
Right. Because every MMA podcast, like if you just watched it, you'd think I'm hosting a country music podcast. But then, my wife watches a lot of CNBC. She was just like, they do a lot of virtual stuff. So like I put my camera kind of over in the middle there, and we decluttered the shelves and made it a nice little piece. So yeah, like this is my office. It's a great space. And 2021 brought a little refresh.
You sound clean too. The audio is sounding good.
Right. Like my microphone, nice. This isn't new, but I don't know what I did to like just make it sound a little bit better. I'm glad I'm sounding better. Probably on your end. Probably because your studio is so crisp.
Perfect. So I told you a few seconds ago. Is there a little something, a little story? You've done interviews, of course. But is there a little something that the world doesn't know about Brendan Fitzgerald?
Yeah. So I have put this out on social media, but it's very rare, and it's like a chuckle thing. But to me, I just think it's like funny. Like we in our position as broadcasters, when you come up the ranks, you do just get to interact with cool people. Like I met the Hanson brothers in Casper, Wyoming. They were there to do a hockey thing. It's just kind of neat. This should be the one that I tell. I was disappeared by David Copperfield too in Casper, Wyoming. This is actually the one I'll tell. I'm calling an audible because the one I was gonna say was I judged a cupcake contest with Maury Povich and his wife Connie Chung.
How did you end up there?
So that they have a summer house on Cape Cod where I'm from in Sandwich, and they were doing like a Sandwich celebrates its heritage, like, I don't know how many 150 years, 250, whatever it was. Sandwich is the oldest town on Cape Cod. And so I was working in Boston as the sports guy at Fox affiliate there. And like, being a native, they were like, would you come down? And then they got Maury Povich and Connie Chung to also be judges in the contest. And so that was kind of funny. Like I have a picture of me like eating a cupcake and Maury's sitting right next to me. And it's just kind of funny. Like I got to chat with him a little bit, and he had to take a phone call from Peter Kostis, who is a golf analyst on CBS, because Connie, for his birthday, got him golf lessons with Peter Kostis. So Maury had played around that morning, and he wanted to talk with Peter about how his swing was doing. I was like, is this real life? This is bananas. But then the other one was David Copperfield came through Casper, Wyoming, and did like a show. He does his at the MGM in Las Vegas. I've seen it. It's insane. I was sitting front row, and it's insane. And I was sitting front row in Casper. And because I worked for the news station there, and they advertised on our station. So they were like, come and watch one of News 13's personalities disappear. And like, I won the drawing in our little newsroom. It's like, anybody who wants to do this, throw your name in the hat. And I did it. And so I think I saw that this trick he had to reveal recently, like in court in the past couple of years. It was the trick where he makes like 13 people disappear on stage. And so people are like, well, how did it happen? And I'm just like, well, it's a lot of running. Like you get up there, and then like, and now I can kind of see it a little bit better when you watch it. It's still kind of crazy. That one I do know, but yeah, you just like sit there, and then all of a sudden you're running out the back, and you run around the side, and it's awesome. It's insane how good the trick is. But I only say that because I'm pretty sure he had to reveal that in court, because I don't know if somebody got injured. I don't know what the thing was, but Copperfield's a man. And yeah, so there's a couple. I'm rambling already.
I love it. Well, so I want to bring you back to the days in Wyoming where you're, I believe, doing play-by-play for high school volleyball, wrestling, rodeo, amongst many other things.
Yeah, it wasn't play-by-play at the time. It was my first professional play-by-play job was with the UFC.
Okay.
It was it was local sports guy. It was,
Understood.
NBC, and people are like, NBC has a sports guy in Wyoming. Well, it's just like every place in small towns. Cause those of us from the Northeast, like the world doesn't exist outside of big cities, but then like you go up to, Plattsburgh, New York, for instance, has like an NBC affiliate. So it's, around town. And so Casper has one too. And that was my first job. So I'm on at 6:00 news and the 10:00 news Monday through Friday. And it's like, here's what happened in sports today. And it was a lot of Denver highlights, but also you cover the local stuff. So it's like, what do they cover? It's just like, well, Casper has 2 high schools. So we blanket that. They have a junior college. We had a short season minor league baseball team. We had a semi-pro indoor football team, and you just cover it, and it's like, here's the highlights and all that sort of stuff.
Now, was the ultimate goal, if I told you maybe 10 years ago, you'd be doing play-by-play for the UFC, what do you tell me at that point?
Yeah. 10 years ago, how old was I? 28. We're in 2011. So I moved in 2010 to Texas. So yeah, that was on my second job at that point, but yeah, you talk about far in the distance and like, what? Like, how? No, probably not. That's before the UFC is even on the Fox deal. You know what I mean? So like the UFC is barely, it's not barely a sport, but it's like, it's way niche. We're still even kind of niche, but we're niche on ESPN, it's a big difference. Like that was what Fuel TV and just like late night cable reruns, highlight videos, VHS tapes and stuff. So I'd have been like, well, something probably has gone very wrong in my career. That's what I would have told you 10 years ago. If you were like, you're going to be the play-by-play guy for the UFC, I'd be like, well, what else am I doing to supplement my income? That's what I would have told you.
And were you a fan though of the sport of MMA at that time?
No, so like I always tell people, my first, kind of UFC experience came in the fall of 2010 when Cain Velasquez knocked out Brock Lesnar. Okay. That was, but that was because I was visiting my buddy in San Diego because the Patriots were in town that weekend. So we were going to go to the Pats game. And that Saturday night before the game, we were just out of the bar and that event was on. And it was like no cover. It was just, the bars were packed on a Saturday night in Pacific Beach, California. And it was like, you can't look away. Like Brock Lesnar was a big enough star. And it was just like, all right, these guys are about to bash each other. So everyone was kind of watching. It was just one of those big UFC pay-per-views that was on at a bar. And I just remember, it's just like, holy smokes, it was just one of those like crazy sporting events. And I didn't follow through on it. I wasn't like, I got to watch more of this, but I do like crystal clear memory of enjoying watching it. And then it was one of those, like when the big pay-per-views happen to be on at whatever bar you're at, or when I worked at ESPN, like they would have the fights on the screens and stuff like that. And I never look away, from the biggest fights, but I didn't follow through because I was just so focused on my career and what I was covering to get to the next step. Right. And you only have so much time for being a fan of other sports. And it just wasn't, I always like to train like a fighter, like I'll, hit a bag at a gym. Like I like that mentality of it. Like they're in awesome shape and, jump rope and hit a bunch of bags or whatever. Grappling was something that was totally like not into what I was ever into, but come around and loved it. And so like really it was just as a casual kind of watch it when the big fights were on until like the opportunity came up to join the Contender Series.
Now, before we even get into that, I want to take you back to a young Brendan Fitzgerald growing up in Cape Cod. Was the goal always to make it into the sports world in some capacity? Was that always your passion? What did you hope when you were, coming up in middle school, high school, that life would look like as an adult?
Yeah. I didn't imagine it would look like this UFC, but it was sports broadcasting, man. I love sports so much. So I was the type of kid, I've kind of changed as an adult. I was the type of kid that didn't like work. Like I didn't like to rake the yard. I didn't like anything that I didn't like, I would mope about or whatever. Right. I think a lot of people are like that. And now it's just like, oh, you need me to rake the leaves? Yeah, I'll go, get the heart pumping a little bit and do it. And it's like a good day's work feels good. But when I was a kid, I was like, I got to do this because I'm not going to be somebody who I'm not going to crunch numbers and then like enjoy my weekends. You know, I was just like, I gotta work in sports, but I was always sports broadcasting. Like I was born in Boston. We moved to Pittsburgh when I was a baby and then moved back when I was 6. But I want to say before we even moved back to Boston, I was such a big like Penguins fan, Steelers fan, Pirates fan at the time. And like, I asked my dad how the people on TV got to do it. You know, I thought, you know, you think it's a hobby, right? Like, how do you get to go to the games and be the guy calling the big moment? Probably didn't put it in those words at 5 years old, but like, you know, I found out it was the career, and like, that was it, man. Like, I mean, seriously, I was in high school, I was in the radio club as much as I could be. Like, I think I was like one of 3 people in the radio club, but I was just like, I'm going to have a sports talk show. You're telling me I can talk into this microphone and whatever. So I had a sports talk show. Then there was a great teacher that kind of was able to follow through on that. He was just like, hey, what if we put the microphone in the basketball court and you can call the play-by-play for basketball? I was like, yep. So did that, you know, just got every bit of experience as I could. And then when it came to colleges, it was like, well, I'm going to be a sports broadcaster. So now where should I go, or what should I do to do that? It was always the mission, and it's changed constantly over the years what the dream job is. And that probably will still change until I'm done. But, you know, like it was always like Sports Center. I mean, Sports Center was the crown jewel. And then it became like play-by-play and sports talk show, you know, sports talk show on the radio to me was something that gripped me for a while. But then you just go where the opportunities are. You kind of like refine what you're good at right now. What bridge can I cross right now? But it was always this business for sure.
Now, there was one story that I saw, I believe it was on your Instagram, that I really, it was, first of all, it was heartfelt, and it was a beautiful story. It was, I believe it was the introduction that your mom had with an individual at Seafood Sam's.
Yeah. Yeah, that was from my podcast over the summer. Yeah,
exactly. And I think for the people that are out there that aren't familiar with this story, maybe I'll let you just give a brief synopsis. But it's a really cool story, I think, just because it shows first like how funny life works sometimes, and also just you know, I think I mean, even in just talking to you for 15 minutes, you can tell, and listening to your stuff, obviously, the kind of hard work and motivation that goes into things every day. But then that coupled with, you know, right time with, you know, the beautiful story with your mom that I'll let you just briefly share, can change someone's life.
Yeah. I mean, great to work hard. You need to, but you need some breaks. Like, you just need your breaks. And it's not like you need to have something like this happen to make it to where I am. It's just that it'll happen. Like, it'll be part of your journey. But this one for me was, I was in Wyoming working, and my mom, you know, back on the Cape, whatever, went to a seafood restaurant. Her friend is a chatty one. Like, she's just the best, you know, Jan. And so she saw a guy sitting at the bar with an Ithaca t-shirt on. He had like a bar t-shirt on, said Ithaca, New York. So she just, all right, I'll just go chat with this guy for a while. Like, he was probably like mid-bite, you know, with his family. But like, she was just like, oh, her son went to Ithaca College, you know, whatever. And he was like, oh, I went to Ithaca College. And so then my mom's in on the conversation, and they're just chatting. And, oh yeah, his name's, you know, Brendan. It's like, oh, I have a son named Brendan. And then, oh yeah, he does the sports up in Wyoming. Like, he went to Ithaca and he did the journalism thing, and now he's a sports anchor in Wyoming. And the guy was at the time, the vice president of news at Fox 25. So basically, or no, he wasn't the vice president. He was like the assistant news director. That's what he was. When you're the news director, you're the vice president. He was the assistant news director at Fox 25. I mean, the assistant news director at a major market station, number one. That's like any type, if you're coming up in the business, that is like somebody you want to, like, if you can start having connections and relationships with assistant news directors or even executive producers in big market cities, not to mention the one that I was ultimately on my dream job list, where I grew up and all that, to have that connection there. He's like, okay, well, my mom got his business card. Next time I'm home, I was able to email him and establish a relationship. He said, yeah, come in the next time you're home. We can chat. I just sat in his office, and like, we looked at my Wyoming tape together, and all right, so like, you know, you need to do this or whatever, but you got your potential. You just need to like on your way, you know, keep in touch. And so I did, but ultimately I end up at Fox 25 one day, you know, and I didn't think so at the time that I would definitely end up there, but then I made another move to Texas, as I mentioned. And then he like reached out to me. I just sent him my stuff every 6 months or whatever. But anyways, ultimately became a connection. I was just like, at one point I was just like, well, I'm probably going to work there one day. I don't know when it's going to happen, but like, you know, my connection there is really good, you know, and all because of a chance meeting at a seafood restaurant. You know what I mean? It's incredible that break happened and how much I owe to that. And it's kind of funny. Like I would always attribute any success I had to that break. Like when I got in Boston, I was the younger guy. I was the main sports anchor. I was 30 years old, 31. And like, you know, the main anchors are in their mid to late 40s and the weather guy's in his mid to late 40s and whatever. And they're established and they liked me. They were great to me. You know, that's one thing I learned early is you don't want to make the jump too early because all of a sudden you're up there with people that have a ton of experience. You know, you put a 24-year-old, you know, play-by-play MMA guy and sit him next to Rogan, like it might not work out that well, you know, like, but they were great to me. And I kept being like, well, I just got this break. You know, my mom happened to meet Paul and that was, you know, he's just like, no, you got here because of your talent. Like they would kind of pump me up like, no, it's not just the break. Like you have to follow through on that and you have to be able to live up to it. But, you know, the break needs to happen in the first place. And it did. And I'm just super thankful it did.
Now, take me back to your mindset when you're working in Wyoming, and then you worked as well in Texas, correct?
Yeah, so I went, Casper, Wyoming was the first on-air job. Rio Grande Valley is the market in Texas. That's Brownsville, McAllen. That is a way down. That's 5 minutes from the border. That's a border.
Gotcha.
You know, that's like, you know where Texas goes into the Gulf of Mexico?
Right.
That's where it is.
Okay.
Like, at the point. Like, same latitude as Miami, like way down. People don't think Texas doesn't go that far. That was a very unique experience, but yeah.
Now, what is the mindset when you're working there? I mean, you're clear, you know, a little away from home, obviously.
Yeah.
You're still young. You're trying to work it and make it in this industry. What's the mindset? I mean, is it a grind every day? Are you really enjoying it? What's going in your head?
Yeah, every part of it. You know, every part of it. There's days you're driving to work and you're swearing the whole time. Like, I can't believe I'm here. Why am I doing this? I'm making no money. People don't realize, you know, everybody doesn't make a lot of money in their entry-level jobs. That's fine. You know what I mean? But you just no money. And, you know, what am I doing here? I'm away from family. Like, I wonder what my reaction would have been if I was in a small market in Texas to start, like the Casper market, like 198. All right, there's 210 media markets in the United States. That was 198. You know, and it's just like, it's so out there and remote and the winters sucked. You know what I mean? Like there are small markets that you can start at that are an hour and a half outside of Dallas, you know, or like, you know, in like, you know, the middle of Pennsylvania where it's just like, okay, well, like Philadelphia is 2 hours away, you know? And so then you're still covering some of those big sports at the time. Like Wyoming, you're just out there. And so, yeah, I mean, I always knew it was a part of the journey. It was like, whenever it got really tough and you're driving your crappy car to work and you don't know if it's going to start so that you can get to work, you know, and meanwhile, you're the person on TV wearing a suit. So the people in town think you're like doing okay. Like you're not. And so like, yeah, it's just, but like anytime it got so bad, anytime you're really like down in the dumps about it, it's just like, well, do I want to do this? Yes. There was no other option. I wasn't like, well, maybe I'll do this industry. Then you can kind of make some money. If you're an accountant, you can be okay in your 20s, you know, but it's like, no way. I'm never doing that. And I heard enough from people while I was in college and early on. It's like, just get through the grind. It's going to pay off and just like get to where you're wanting to go. And then also it's like at the end of the day, like when I, put on my crappy suit and like wore my $7 ties from Ross Dress for Less and like put on my own makeup to go on and do highlights of the girls volleyball game it was fun. Like that part is still fun. And it's just like, well, if that's part's fun, then you're doing the right thing and you'll get to where you want to go. But it's like, sometimes you're on fire. I just made an awesome thing. I'm going to put that on my resume tape. That could get me the job. Like, you'd have those moments of like, that could be the thing that catches the attention and gets the next job. And that's something that now I don't really get. Like, I get something that was a great call, but I'm not like, cool, I wonder if the NBC sports guy will let me call NHL someday because of that call. So you kind of lose that. So you get those moments of euphoria about it, but it was sprinkled in with just a lot of junk too. And a lot of, like, you know, and looking back on it when you get older, I should have had a better mindset towards that. I wish I had this better mindset, but you only get those sort of things with experience and age, you know? And so that was part of it.
Were there ever any doubts along the way if you'd quote unquote make it? I don't know what your definition of make it at the time was.
I mean, yeah, I think, so like your definition of making it, I think changes, because when you start, you know, you're like, well, yeah, I'm going to do this and this. And then my dream job is to get to Boston. And then my dream job is to get to ESPN and Anchor Sports Center. It's like, yeah, I can do it. You know, like I could do that. You almost have a self-inflated sense of how good you are too when you're a beginner. I think that happens in a lot of different things. It's like, oh yeah, look at me. Like, I'm on fire. I'm going to get there. And then you like, you know, you get in the business and then you see, like in Casper, so, you know, in those small markets, you sign a contract for a couple of years, you know, you're going to be there for a little bit. But then you see other people that are trying to get their next job. And then you're like, wow, like that person's good too. Like my friend Walter, he's good. He's a good news anchor and he's having trouble getting his next job. So man, maybe I should pare down my make it to, I want to work in a market with pro sports teams, you know, so that I can cover the NFL and the NHL and baseball and whatever. And like, if you told me in Casper that all of a sudden, like your career's not going to take you to Boston ever, but you're going to be able to work in, you know, St. Louis and cover the Blues and the Rams at the time. You know, I'd be like, that's cool. That's cool. That's big sports. Never wanted to live in St. Louis, not a particularly awesome city, but yeah, man, that's what I got into business for. If you told like you're going to spend your career in Denver covering those teams and you're going to be the 30-year guy in Denver that is just the part of the fabric of the sports industry there, I'd be like, yeah, I'm good with that. That to me then became making it. And anything on top of that would have been gravy. And as such, my big market job, you know, from Texas to Boston, that the big jump that you like dream about, can I make a jump that big, or am I going to have to go 4 more jobs in between? Because some people do it that way. Mine happened to be Boston. And I was just like, holy smokes, I made it, you know?
I think it's also inspiring to hear, you know, for myself, someone who's young and interested in that world. And in talking to you for just 20, 25 minutes, it's quite clear that you really have that mentality where I don't know if you always had this, or maybe you disagree with my analysis, but you strike me as someone who's willing to put their head down and grind. And you know that, and I think that's also, it's easier said than done. It's also easier said than done when you're away from home and you're in the middle of Wyoming, which I imagine you never imagined really you'd ever be in. Right. Have you always had that mentality of, you know what, I want this, so I'm going to do everything it takes to get there?
Well, I think everyone has it. I'm going to borrow something that I heard. It's not mine. It's Jerry Seinfeld's. And like, this is the most popular video I ever posted to my Twitter account.
Okay.
If you love something enough, it's not a grind. Like there will be parts of it that are grindy. Like I mentioned, you know, you got to get through the tough parts, but like I said, like if it's fun to step on camera and do those highlights at the end of the night and you like that part of it enough, then you will do whatever it takes to keep doing that. And this Seinfeld was on Howard Stern, like in the earlier in the year, like in May or something like that. And I don't listen to Howard Stern regularly. Like I don't have satellite radio, but like when he has a good guest on, I'll sign up for a free trial so I can listen to the interview. So like he had Seinfeld on. I was like, well, I got to listen to this because I'm just a huge Seinfeld fan, both for his show and his comedy and stuff, but just like, he's just a really smart guy. And he has this life perspective that a lot of people don't have, and he's able to make light of it. So I was like, what a perfect time to listen to Jerry Seinfeld for an hour. And they were talking about the Michael Jordan documentary, The Last Dance. And like Howard was mentioning, it's just like, I appreciated so much the will that he had to get better and to ultimately, he's just like, and I had the same thing in radio where I was just bad. I was bad at first, and I just, wanted it enough, and I just had the will to get better. And Seinfeld corrected him. He says, what you did was not will. And what Michael Jordan has was not will. That put your head down and grind only gets you so far if you don't like it. He's like, what you had and what Michael Jordan had and what I have is love. If you love what you do, you will never run out of energy to do it. And I was just like, oh man. And that's when I started I started getting a little more creative with my Instagram this year. I was just like, it doesn't just have to be pictures of me and my family, or like, I'm in Vancouver, look at this building, So I was just like, oh, you can put out messages and different things that resonate with you. So I clipped off like 2 minutes of that. And for some reason, this is weird. On Instagram, like it got like 400 views. It got retweeted. Like Louis Riddick put it out. I want to say it has like 800,000 views. It's like a little 2-minute clip, and it's static. It's not even video. I just made like a quick thing. I put a picture of each of the guys on there, and it was just like, here's what it takes to be great. And it's like 2 minutes of like Seinfeld saying it's love. Love is as he puts it, the bottomless pool of energy, and you'll never run out. And you can have the discipline, the work ethic, whatever, and that's all good. But if you don't love it, it doesn't matter. If you have discipline, work ethic, but you're doing something that you don't love to do, ultimately, then you're not going to achieve as high. You could be good at something and whatever, but you're not going to be like really good. You're not going to achieve to the ultimate level that you ultimately want to. I
really like that. And I also, it makes me wonder for you, what is it about this sports broadcasting world that you've always loved?
I'm a Leo, so I like attention, always liked attention, always like to talk, and always love sports, as I mentioned. And so it's like, when you're out in your yard shooting baskets and you're in your head, like doing the 3-2-1 call of the game type of thing, and like playing knee hockey and announcing along to it. And it was just like, I was just such a big fan of sports that I was like, I got to do it. And then when I started doing it, I found out that it's like, you do love it as much as you think. And then the more you find out about anything, the more there is to know, like, what was the quote the other day? It was like, as our island of knowledge gets bigger, so too does the shore of our ignorance. Like as you start learning more about something, you also understand how much you don't know about it and how much you want to keep kind of conquering that. And so about sports broadcasting was just like, I just loved it. Just the sports talk shows that made me laugh, the highlight guys on SportsCenter that were funny, the call of the game that was iconic for a big moment, just all the different parts of the entertainment of it, and front row seat for sports and everything. It was just, and then, to be on camera, to talk about in this case, talk about myself, but like, to hear your voice and to like have that attention. It's like there's plenty of news people that don't get in it for themselves. And then like, there's a lot of people that like the time, like Bruce Buffer likes hearing himself do all that. And, but you have to have an element of that to be really, really good at it. And then you got to know how to marry it. And so, it's just, there's different parts of it that I've loved, and you just keep finding new parts of it that are just a lot of fun.
Now, I know you did the Contender Series before your first call for UFC Fight Night 123, I believe, Ortega versus Swanson. But take me back to that day that you get the call that you're going to be calling a fight night. I mean, what's going through your head there?
Call for the fight night?
For the call for the fight night.
Yeah. So I was on Cape Cod visiting family, I think, when I got this. A weird time. We were living in South Carolina, just on the outside, I say South Carolina, but Charlotte area. That's where I worked for ESPN. Got laid off by ESPN in April, got the Contender Series. So we've gone through that summer. And then I had known that I was going to keep working for the UFC in some capacity, but I had no idea what. At the time when I ended the Contender Series, my boss just had a baby. So he wasn't even at the last one. He's like, I'll be talking to you, whatever, but hands full. And so I went back to South Carolina, and it was, early September. And then I had nothing on the horizon. Then I was laid off, but then this Contender Series thing came a couple months later. cool. And then it was just like, well, there's definitely going to be another season of Contender Series. And it was like, okay, cool. But I wasn't like a full-time guy. I was paid by the show. And so then it's like September, and it's just like, all right, well, now what? Now it's like, I don't know when the next thing is. But at the time they almost, I think, or they were going to think about making Contender Series another season in the winter. I was like, okay, well, I can make it till then. We're good. Then like in our house in South Carolina, which we rented, we discovered mold in it. I'm just like, oh, there's like some mold in the air ducts. Not good. We had a 2-year-old at the time. So we were going to go visit my family like a few days later. And like the guy who was like checking out our house, we were just like, should we just get on a flight tonight? And he was just like, yeah, that wouldn't be a bad idea. Get them to clean it out. So we're like, oh, Jesus. So we like rushed, go up to Cape Cod. So I'm visiting my family on Cape Cod. How we're in touch with the people trying to clean the house out, like make sure there's no mold in the house. And then like get a call from my boss when I didn't know what was next. And like, I'm at a family friend's house, and they're just kind of like, I think in their heads, they thought the UFC thing, okay, like, when are you going to start covering real sports again? And, but like I had known from the Contender Series, like, you talk about a fun gig. Right. You talk about a great sport, fun, and like play-by-play all of a sudden was just a blast compared to doing studio stuff. And I was just like, no, I was just like, if they tell me to be in it for a long time, I'll love it, And so I got a call from my boss and called him back. And then he was just like, he told me about Fresno. I think then it was like mid-September, maybe mid-September. Was it that? Was it early September? Something like that. But yeah, so that was that. I want to say that was it. And it was just like, okay, cool. I'll be ready for that. And then we we eventually moved out of that house, stayed with my brother-in-law in Arkansas. And I was like, well, let me get through this Fresno thing so that, we're not moving wherever we're going to end up. Then we're just like, where should we move to? All of a sudden we can move to any place in the country. Then we're in Arkansas for a few weeks. And I'm just like, or we could just move to Las Vegas now. And then, just be there. And then I could work the Fresno show. And then it's just like, hey, UFC, I live in Vegas now. And my wife and I actually met in Las Vegas a long time ago. So we had history there. And so we had other friends. And so like I found out about Fresno, and all this was happening in the fall. And then like, coming up on that show, I knew it was like kind of for a job almost. It was another sense of an audition. It's like, if I do this one well, then they'll keep asking me to do UFC shows. And then maybe I have a job now. And so that's how it worked out.
So real quick, the Contender Series, that was your first time doing play-by-play?
Well, I had done play-by-play in college.
Okay. Okay.
But how many years had gone by?
Right.
12 years had gone by. That spring, or I guess winter spring at ESPN, before the layoff in April, I called 4 college basketball games play-by-play. So yeah, none of them were in person. All of them were on the remote, wow. the remote broadcast. I was calling a Texas Tech Baylor game from North Carolina, in a off a monitor with an analyst, and we were on ESPNU, and so I just had a handful of those games. And as soon as I did those games, even though we weren't at the arena or anything, I was just like, geez, this sitting in the studio for halftime, that's boring now. What do we do? Okay, welcome in. So-and-so has 12 points, 4 rebounds. Let's get to the highlights, blah, blah, blah. Commercial break. All right, send it back to the second half. Like that all of a sudden became the layup line. And it was just like, no, this play-by-play thing, you're like voicing stuff as it's happening. You're on for 2 hours calling a game. Like it, kind of fell in love with a new thing that I didn't think was missing in my career at that point.
Now, talk to for perhaps the casuals out there that don't understand the art of play-by-play calling. Will you kind of run through how that is different from anything else in the broadcasting scene, and perhaps then what your preparations would look like as a play-by-play announcer for the UFC?
So it's the easiest way to boil it down is, if you're in the studio, you are either talking about something that has already happened or that's something that has not happened yet. Right? It's a preview show. What do you look for in this fight? Blah, blah, blah. You're predicting the future. Who's going to win? How's it going to go? What's the X factor? But when you boil it down, that's all just noise. That's just noise of like, here's what we think is going to happen. Nobody ever knows. And then the recap, after something's happened. All right, let's relive it. And there's value to both of those. Like, I love getting ready for a big fight with a preview show just as much as anybody else, and Fox, NFL, whatever. And then the recap show, you want to see it again, just be like, okay, good job, Moreno and Figueiredo. Pay-per-view next month, everybody. It's like, no, you got to relive that, And so there's value in both of those, but in the role of the broadcaster and those, nothing is as fun as, calling the big head kick, calling the shot, like wondering aloud to everybody watching with them, like my hands are being clenched as this rear naked choke gets set in. Like, is he going to get out? Oh, and he's out, but we just get to voice it. And so to be the voice of that, and then to be the voice of that in real time and kind of like keep tabs on it. Like when Wonder Boy fought Jeff Neal, and like he had that knee injury. So like Wonder Boy's cruising, and all of a sudden, like he's got to make it through 5 more minutes on a knee that we don't know how bad it is. And it's just like, that's like sweaty palms. Like, is he gonna be able to move, or now he can't move as well? So Neal's gonna tag him with something or whatever. So to like live in that moment of anxiety with that everybody's feeling when you're watching a big event, but to be able to voice it and kind of like be cool under pressure, but then have the outbursts of the big knockouts. And then your voice gets to live on that finish or highlight forever. And unlike in other sports, like they don't show a lot of NFL promos with Joe Buck calling like touchdown Giants. Like that's not really part of the promos, but in the UFC, it's all part of the
That's
promos.
A great point.
Like, and so I learned that when I called Sean O'Malley's knockout, which was the first Contender Series that I did. And then they used it on a promo like a week or two later, like, hey, check out the Contender Series. And then like my call of the knockout, whatever. And I was just like, oh man, I was like, we found something here to like stroke my ego. Great fights. Like just, you get all of it. And it's like, you can't make it about yourself, but you do have to honor the moment with a big call. And then just the fact that they're going to use that to promo stuff is just, it's just so cool. I mean, it's just makes it just so much fun that I didn't really expect or know about,
And I think what also really impressed me about you is and Anik and all of you guys really. I mean, I think there's a couple things. First, it's been so cool to see all of these UFC commentators, and whether it's Megan Levy, Laura Sanko, all of you guys grow in a weird way together, because as the sport's grown. And then I think also what impresses me about yourself is how easy you guys make it. How your rhythm with Bisping or Felder is it feels so natural, and that to the viewer, we don't maybe always think about that. We're like, oh yeah, they're just doing their thing. But I'm wondering, one, has it always been that kind of fluent? Is it easy to work on that rhythm with them? Is that something you guys are even conscious about or talk about? And for you as the play-by-play, who's, kind of leading the show in that sense, how does that, work and factor into your preparations?
Yeah, the preparation part of it is very minor in terms of like, I'm working with Felder. Okay, so how am I going to prepare differently? For me, that doesn't cross into it unless it's like, I'm calling an Edson Barboza fight and I'm working with Felder, different story. He's fought him twice, so you want to know those like broad strokes of their history and does it tie into something? Like Rogan was talking about the eye pokes, and then he turns to DC, and then DC's, I was hoping you weren't going to say anything, but so that part is that's just a natural part of like keeping it in your memory bank. You know what I mean? Like, Felder's dealt with this. All right, Paul, I remember you dealt with this in the past, but it's not really a part of your preparation. It's just relying on your knowledge of the sport, following it. But in terms of the chemistry, like that's part of being a professional. Like you get in it and you're just like, oh, when I get in this job, I'm just going to have back to like why I love the job so much. It's just like, I viewed it as like, so I wasn't in a fraternity, but like I viewed it as if, oh, cool. Like my job can be buddies, with your people, fellow sports fans. Hey, we'll probably golf on the weekends and whatever, and then like, I'm going to be best friends with everyone I work with because we all love sports. It's like, yeah, that is not how it works. You work with all different types, and I'm not talking about the UFC. I'm talking about my journey up. Like I didn't play a round of golf with a coworker until I was in Boston. I was like, hey, didn't you get the memo? We're supposed to be like boys and like, go golfing on the weekends. Why are you so weird? But I, with the UFC, so it's part of being a professional to have that chemistry on the air and be good on the air. But like with the UFC, I haven't had to force any of it. And I think that it speaks to the, great ability of our boss, Zach, who his job is to put the puzzle pieces in place to like stock the chessboard, and ultimately got to find guys that will fit together. And that's not the entirety of it, but when it came to pairing, like he paired me and Felder on the Contender Series that first season for a reason, like he thought that we would be good together. And it just so happens that he was right. Like Paul's from Philly. I'm from the Northeast. Like he's a funny guy, good guy, just he, and he didn't even really know our personalities. Like I didn't meet him before working with Paul, and I didn't meet my boss in person before working with Paul, but I think he got the sense of it from people that we did the audition with. And I think he looks for that and like, all right, now we're going to bring in an analyst. Like we know DC can be good with everybody. He's just the most jovial, friendly, nice guy. We know that, Bisping has his characteristics and Paul has his characteristics. And then you got to fit, you know what I mean? Like, that's part of like finding the roster. So with the UFC, the chemistry thing has been like the easiest part of the job. I think that I, even as the new guy to the sport, got the respect of everybody because I loved it so much. It wasn't a forced thing. I've talked about my time at ESPNU, and it was like a lot of fun, worked with great people. But like if you're on network number 3 for ESPN and you're doing halftime of Houston against Tulane college basketball, like that's something I'm not watching. If I'm at home, if I have the night off, I'm not watching that game. But if I have when I don't call a UFC event, I'm watching it. I'm watching the whole thing, and none of it's a chore. So I think, when you have the true love for the sport, I've jumped in and been like, wow, this is awesome. Like total respect for what they do. Got into jujitsu, like, just immerse myself in the world. And I think that they appreciate that about me. And then, so it's made the chemistry a lot easier and something that's not really a question mark.
And I still think, what's also all the more impressive is, so you're 38 right now, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
I believe that's the youngest of at least the play-by-play or of the broadcasting crew other than the fighters.
Yeah. Annex, early 40s. And I think John Gooden's right there. Yeah.
So do you feel like, and I think it was funny that you mentioned it, I believe on the first or your latest episode of your Fitz Nation podcast. People go check that out. With Calvin Cater. I was listening to that this morning, where you talk about how this.
Hey, were you listening or did you watch it on YouTube?
You know what? I listened and I thought the quality was great. I wanted to.
Did you like it?
I did like it.
Yeah, like the quality of the interview sounds the same, but I was just like, I need to put more effort into the audio, and then whatever. But I was just curious.
I think the audio sounds great, and I like the I like the intro because I was about to quickly quote it. I don't know if paraphrase it. Where you talk about how I think America is very kind of goal driven. And I think my question to you is, maybe it's not necessarily in the form of setting goals. But, you started end of 2017, we're early 2021, so you've been there about 3 years or so. What is, managing those expectations and creating new expectations as you go? What are there any real goals, if you will, for lack of a better word? Or where do you hope to see the Brendan Fitzgerald career in 5 or 10 years?
Right. So that's a good talking point because, it's tough. Like we had to do company goals or what as part of like Endeavor, you have a year end, like a lot of companies, a year end evaluation, and then like sometimes goal setting. I don't know if I have to do the goal setting this year. I haven't seen that email come across yet, but like, that's part of it. Like, what are your personal goals for this year? Here's company priorities and whatever. And like, I didn't know how to answer that a couple of years ago. I was just like, if you're telling me to write down goals, like tangible goals, like a goal to be successful should be specific. Like you hear a lot of people say that. And it's just like, if you're like, I don't want to write this down, but if you're telling me to write down goals, then I would say, I want to call a pay-per-view. But like, that's in no means like I'm coming for John Anderson.
Right.
I think we have the best quarterback room that I've ever been in terms of knowing each other's roles and having respect for each other. Like I love anytime I get to hang out with them, which doesn't happen enough because we have the same job. But like, so like when it comes to goals, it's like, it's not up to me. So how can I say I want to call a pay-per-view and that's a goal? That's not up to me. That's up to somebody else. So that's a bad goal. And that's not even something that I necessarily want, because, you know, like John Gooden almost was in line to call it in Fight Island, because we saw in the documentary, like, Anik had a false positive. Is he going to, and he was just like, that's not how I want to get it. You know? And it's just like, I only want to just be respected by the people that I work with. I want to have the fans enjoy the shows that I do. And so in line with that, it's like, you can't really set a goal in terms of play-by-play. You know, unless your goal is going to be, I want to sit next to Joe Rogan and call a title fight in Madison Square Garden. It's like, well, that sounds nice. Like, I bet that would be a lot of fun. But if you set that as a goal, like a goal of mine was always to anchor SportsCenter. And then I realized, like, anchoring SportsCenter is not something that is up to me. I can't be like, I'm going to anchor SportsCenter now because I deserve it. That's not what happens. So you have to, in this business, it's really weird. Like, setting specific goals is good for, you know, instead of get in shape, say, I'm going to run a half marathon in July. That's right. You know, the goal type of thing. But what happens after the half marathon? You're just going to go back to eating like crap. So, you know, I have really into like the process-based thing of like what I can control and like what allow me to continue to have success and be better in what way possible. So like podcasting is kind of a good thing for me, but I've never set goals on like subscriber counts or downloads or anything like that. To me, the most important thing with my podcast is just like, did I do 40 episodes this year? You know, did I not just like blow it off and take a 3-month break because I didn't feel like doing it, or like, you know, process based on that, on something that I can control. And then like, if I put the effort into what's important to me in that regard, then it'll just grow by accident. It'll just grow as a side effect. So yeah, I mean, in terms of my career, I would say, like, you know, if you say, what's your dream job, is always a good question for anybody. And my dream job has like constantly been pushed. Like, my dream job was working in Boston. Then I worked in Boston, and my brother's friend, he actually made me think a lot, because he was just like, now that you have your dream job, what's your dream job? And like, immediately I was just like, well, this isn't it for me. You know, I'm not just going to do this for the next 40 years. Like, I have so much that I can do outside of this. And so I've kind of kept that thought everywhere I've gone. And it's not like to be dissatisfied with something, but just to know, like, if you get somewhere and it's your, like, if you're an NFL quarterback, that's your dream job, but you got to like be better at it and do more with it. And you can't just be like, cool, I made it, so now I'm good. It's like, you got to like push the envelope even further. So with, you know, if you talk 5-10 years down in my career, I hope it's like, it's foolish for me to say, like, I hope I'm doing the same thing, but I could see doing that. I feel like I'm finally in a job where I could sit here for the next 20 years if they'll have me, and be perfectly happy with it, make a good living with my family. I love Las Vegas. I love the UFC. I love the sport. But I hope that's not all. I hope it's not that plug and play. You know, I hope there's other projects I can do. Maybe my podcast grows, you know, maybe it leads to other sorts of things that, you know, so like I have my dream job number one, but I love interviewing, which is why I started the podcast. So do I have a bigger interview show? You know, like, I love David Faraday's show on the Golf Channel, you know, where he traveled around, and it's like a glimpse into this person. It was like a half-hour show, but it's like, or an hour, depending on who, but it's like, it doesn't have to be just golf. You know, he talked to Charles Barkley about golf and about his life and stuff. And so like that type of thing is something that interests me, that I've been able to start doing with the UFC. And so like, who knows where that can grow while I'm doing the UFC play-by-play thing.
Right. And also, I'm also curious as to, with the current situation that you're in, if there's something that you've learned that perhaps you wish you knew at a younger age, or that you would give as a piece of advice to someone who is looking to get into this sports industry from the broadcasting standpoint, that you now know that you perhaps didn't when you were younger, coming up the ranks.
Yeah. This is a question I get a lot, and I appreciate it every time, because everybody wants to improve. And like, the best way to improve, you could say, is to look at somebody who's had success and then ask them, what did you do? You know, it's why Tom Brady is selling books now. And so, but the other part of that too, is I just feel like it's very different then like when I started in Casper, I don't even know if YouTube was a thing, but it wasn't a thing. And, to get my, when I was sending out resume tapes at the end of my senior year of college, I was sending them out on VHS. And like, you could send an email, but then they'd have to match up the email with the VHS tape that they would eventually get in the mail and so you just had to send a cover letter and a VHS tape, physical. Then with Wyoming, same thing. I sent a DVD, and the guy had like a stack of DVDs. And my reporter friend that I went to college with, and I'm still great friends with, is like, he would always comment. He'd just be like, go in on an interview, and he's just like, it's so depressing. They have a stack of DVDs this high on their desk. What are the chances they're even going to they use it as a coaster? Are they going to even put the thing in? So now it's so different. YouTube channel, links, email, LinkedIn, all that stuff. But having said that, network like crazy. I mean, that's how, the break happened for me in a seafood restaurant, but it could have just as easily happened on LinkedIn, where I sent somebody a note to a fellow Ithaca College graduate that said, oh, I'll help out this person. Or, oh, Brendan, I have a son named Brendan and they went to my school. Let's see what this person's about. Like, blanket send out stuff like that. Start your podcast, YouTube channel, or your resume tape, like always be working on it. I mean, I had to check out a camera from like our TV department and then go shoot fake stand-ups around Ithaca College's campus, like stand in front of the lacrosse field and just make a fake story, literally a fake. I just be like, I have the VHS, but nobody has a VCR.
Oh,
right.
I feel like that would go viral on if you posted.
Right.
That.
So like, oh, you should see my hair. It's super long.
Same kind of hairstyle, or
no, like it was long because I played hockey. So I wanted it to come out of the back of my helmet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was like, but, no, I still have them, like, and I still have copies of Casper, but they're on like mini DV, and it's like I've tried to digitally convert them because I'd go to the well with those on Instagram, but I'll get it. It's on my to-do list for 2021. But yeah, so like, network. I mean, it's boring. It's boring because it's the same advice that everyone gets. But network, start your podcast, start your YouTube channel, all that stuff. But I will say, other than that, like, what do I wish I learned? Wish I started reading books a lot earlier. Doesn't matter what. Read Harry Potter for all I care. Just read books. Your vocabulary will improve. I just happen to like personal development books and stuff. And a lot of people will scoff and roll their eyes at that Tony Robbins and call it bullshit. And it's just like, no, man. Like, it's like the high school cool kids club being played out with adults. It's just like, you listen to that. What is he? Your self-help guru, self-help, whatever. And it's just like, well, what, are you perfect? Like, are you the kid who gets C's, but so you don't want to be too smart? Right. You don't want to be too good, And I like the personal development space is starting to be a cool thing, like Gary Vaynerchuk is starting to make it like this thing where it's like, it's okay to like really want to improve yourself or work on stuff or like read books that, like Mark Manson has really good books, yes. You know what I mean? And so it's like books like that in that genre that are just helping you to whatever, and you think that reading a book by Mark Manson about giving an F might not help your broadcast career, but I'm here to tell you it will. Like right. You'll take something from that book that will just make you live a different way, think a different way, be a little bit more creative, like be a little bit more self-reflective on, is what I'm doing getting me towards that goal? Like I always thought that being part of being a good sports guy on TV was like, oh, I have to live the part of the fan. Like I have to drink a lot of beer in the bars and be the drunk fan who calls into the sports talk show because I'm on the other end of it too. She's like, no. You don't have to do any of that. You can live the life that you want, not fit in any mold that you thought that you were in, and make your way and like figure out the best things to help push you on your way. People will roll their eyes at Tom Brady and his body coach, but it's just like, guy's 43's in the playoffs. All right. We're still going to laugh at him. We're still going to like roll our eyes and say that he's full of crap because he's only selling his agenda. Or are we like, maybe it works too, And so that's what I've kind of tried to do with like, look for lessons in everything, look for a way to improve in whatever, and it'll just naturally spill over into your broadcast journey or whatever you want to do.
Now, quickly to wrap things up, obviously you're still very young, but I'm always curious into hearing if you've ever thought about the legacy you hope to leave, perhaps as a broadcaster, Hopefully, obviously, a lot of long, healthy years ahead of you. But as a broadcaster, as a father, as you mentioned, husband, as a man, what do you ever think about that? And is that, for some people it guides them and for some it doesn't, but is that something you've ever given thought to?
I mean, I've placed value on my health more than ever before over the last year and a half. Right. My mom passed away in September 2018. And like, that was kind of an epiphany for me in terms of like our health, our health is all we have, So it's like, no matter what field you want to be in. And so, my family's just made changes over the last year and a half or so. It's just, we are just looking at our health, like health is number one, like, is this a healthy thing for me or not? Mentally, physically, whatever. And, it's not like I'm perfect in that regard, but I'm just like, like I said, I always used to think like, oh no, the sports fan eats a bunch of pizza and drinks a bunch of beer. So that's what I've always thought of myself as that. And then I was just like, but I don't have to continue being that because that's not going to serve me well. And so I've always tried to like just, I don't know, like I blew up in Wyoming because there's not much to do when it's super cold outside. I eat DiGiorno's like every night. I got up to like 270 pounds.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And so,
what are you at right now?
I'm like 215-ish, 210, 215. I sit in that range.
270.
Right. Yeah. I know it's big. My mom asked me when she saw one of my tapes that I sent home, she said, what did you swallow, a turkey? Cause it was like right after Thanksgiving. And, so like, then I was just like, okay, I gotta like look good on camera, look decent. I never wanted to be the huge guy on camera. It's just like, what are you doing talking about the athletes? Like there's sports talk hosts that are Jason Whitlock. Could Jason Whitlock play any downs at quarterback? But he's the one sitting there criticizing a guy. And that's not to pick on him. He's not the only one. This just came to my head. But like, so I was just like, well, I don't want to be that ever. I want to like at least look like I have the presence of an athlete of some sort since I'm talking about sports. But yeah, and that's just evolved. But in terms of the legacy, like I don't know, like my name is my voice is already going to be attached to some big moments, like I've said, and hopefully those moments continue. But I hope my legacy is a lot more than about some highlight reel moments. I hope that when people hear that, they think like, that man, Brendan was a great guy to work with. You know what I mean? Like it's important for me to have the close relationships. Like, yeah, it's great that I can call a game or call a fight like I can, and that's awesome. And I'll have those moments that are part of the Fight Pass library and whatever else I go on to call. But I don't really think about that as just like my son can look at that fight call and like be proud of it. It's just like I'd rather set him on the path of like what's important for me in the big picture so that it can be important to him in terms of like his health and how he lives so that he can have a long and happy and successful life because, kind of starts with how we're all feeling about ourselves and how we're all feeling physically and all that sort of stuff.
Beautiful. People can they can follow you on Instagram and Twitter at Brendan Fitz TV. And then, of course, subscribe, listen to the Fitz Nation podcast that you can find pretty much everywhere, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's on,
YouTube, Apple's podcast app, Spotify, all that good stuff.
Yeah, Amazon, Pandora, whatever.
Perfect.
I don't know who listens to podcasts on Pandora.
I don't know either, but
they started it.
Maybe this year's the year. Brendan, it was an absolute pleasure, honor to have you on. It really means a lot. I'm a big fan of yours and, a big fan of the UFC. And so whenever I get to see commentators that I enjoy, especially all the UFC ones are really great, and especially you. So pleasure to have you on my show. And if you're ever, hopefully...
if we ever travel again?
Yeah. What the fuck?
I'll see you at 2025.
That's it. Hopefully maybe at the Garden or here at Barclays Center. Love to get you in studio one day, but, until then, man.
How old are you, Felix?
How old do you think?
I think you're 26.
20.
20?
Yeah.
Where do you go to college?
Boston University, actually.
You go to BU?
I go to BU.
All right. How do you like it? So you're virtual school?
A virtual school. How do I like virtual school?
No, I mean, just like, did you go to Boston at all? Did you go for a year?
So I actually went to UC Santa Barbara my freshman year of college.
Oh, you failed. Why did you leave Santa Barbara for Boston?
Okay, but see, I'm a New Yorker, and you understand this being Northeastern.
I know.
They walk around barefoot. People are too nice. You know what I mean? Like I miss.
Well, especially if you want to do the sports media thing.
Well, right. So I'm right now. I'm currently in the business school at Boston University. So I might transfer over to the communications broadcasting side, because that is something that in the past few months I've gotten more interested in. But I love the city of Boston. It's a great place.
That's funny.
It's a great place. It's a great place to go to school.
Well, yeah. So Boston is a great college town, and this is blasphemous what I'm about to say, but people like Boston has a very big inferiority complex to New York, as you probably know, and like our sports teams are obviously competing
superior
on the same or superior level, but like if you give me a city to go visit for 2 or 3 days, I'm picking New York every time. People, you know what I mean? Like I love New York. Like I'll wear the I love New York t-shirt. It's just like so cool. But then, well, I don't know but I couldn't live in New York. I don't know if I could live in New York. I don't know. Like I always tell
you strike me as someone who could. You strike me as someone who could live in New York.
I probably could. Like, my wife's from Hawaii, and I'm always like, when we're older, we should like get an Airbnb in New York for like 3 months. We should do like a summer in New York, like in Manhattan, and just like live it. And there's obviously a bunch of pluses and minuses to living in the city, and as there is anything else, but. When I was there, I covered the Super Bowl in New York. I worked in Boston, but I covered the Broncos Seahawks Super Bowl. And it really hit home. I was in awe that Times Square was closed and taken over wall to wall with fans and a giant slide and whatever, the Lombardi Trophy. And it was a big museum. And 3 blocks over, it was like nobody knew the Super Bowl was happening.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like anything in New York, it's a different world on every block. And there's some parts of that is so cool. And then there's other parts of that are kind of lame. Like if the Bruins are in the playoffs, there are Bruins hats and t-shirts across the city. And you can walk in any Dunkin' Donuts and be like, hey man, how about the Bees tonight? And if you go into New York and you're just like, hey, Rangers, huh? And they'll just be like, excuse me?
Yeah.
I'm from Hong Kong. Talking about.
No, that's a great point.
There's good and bad parts of it, but I love the fact that you could go to New York City 6,000 times, eat in a different restaurant for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for every single one of them and have a different experience. In Boston, if you go there 10 times, then you're probably repeating stuff.
I would agree with you on that. I would say food-wise, there's some great spots in Boston, but yeah, you probably are repeating it. You probably are repeating it.
Your favorite 10
it's so much smaller.
Boston,
it's so much smaller.
It's way, people don't understand how much
it's
smaller
tiny.
It is. Yeah.
I go to the same really 3 neighborhoods.
You can walk it. You can walk the whole city of Boston, basically.
But I think it's having grown up in New York City my whole life and then going to school in Boston now, I think for me it's the 2 best places on the East Coast. I love the people.
Right. And you'll get and it's funny because then since you grew up with New York, you know the good and the bad parts of it. And then you'll see the good parts of Boston that you never thought were there.
Right.
And then, it's just kind of funny how that works.
Do you ever come back to Boston?
I was at the UFC event when we were there in October last year.
You were there. Okay. So I did
like the desk show. Oh, you did that one?
I had Anik on the show that Monday.
Didn't you meet him then? I saw
exactly.
Put on his Instagram.
Exactly. And I'm
talking to the same guy, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought.
So I had him on the show on Monday by like some random tweet. I like tweet at him. I'm like, hey, will you come on my podcast? Yeah. And he tweeted back. And so then I had Anik on Monday, and then he like linked me up before the event on Friday. But that sounds so foreign in a world where we can go to sporting events.
October 2019. So I was there, but my brother still lives on the Cape. He actually lives in the house we grew up in. They took it over from my mom, and so and then my dad has a place on the Cape, but he lives in Pittsburgh, and it's on my to-do list to go back there and see family and stuff like that. Obviously, it's not happening anytime soon, but. I'm like Tom Brady too. It's just like I'm out of the Northeast. I'm not dealing with winter anymore. That's why I say Santa Barbara. It's just like.
Do you enjoy
I wish I went to.
Do you enjoy living in Vegas?
Yeah, really like it. Really like it a lot. I mean, met my wife here, and she's from Hawaii, so it's kind of like in the middle. But the desert is cool. She grew up with the ocean. I grew up with the ocean. We love the beach.
Right.
We go on vacation anywhere. It's the beach. But somehow we just love living in the desert too. So yeah, it's been cool.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Hey, well, thank you again so much.
20 years old. You're way ahead of the game. You tell me what I should be doing.
No. But I don't know. I mean, for me, it's in the past couple months, I think, especially with basically only watching UFC, it's just, having had Anik on a while ago and staying in pretty close contact with him. And seeing people like yourself. I just think you guys have the coolest job in the world.
Yeah, man.
And
it's pretty cool.
Just to be, I don't know, just like the moments.
It's still cool when we don't travel, but and then like you throw in the travel element too, when we're going to Stockholm, Sweden for 3-4 days at a time. And it's just like, cool. A couple of restaurants in Stockholm, Sweden are awesome. And going for a walk here, and then Chile and different parts, just Auckland, New Zealand. Like it's an incredible job, both in the execution of fight night and just what surrounds it in terms of being able to see the world is just like pinch me, man, because I would be happy being a play-by-play guy for the ACC, but if I had to go to Blacksburg, Virginia 3 times a year, I'd be like, I'm getting over this, So yeah, it's great.
Well, I'm excited to see your continued success, and again, hopefully see you sometime soon. If the world ever gets normal.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
All right, man. Keep in touch.
Take care. Thanks, Brendan.
Awesome. Thanks, Felix. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you haven't done so already, please make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Instagram at felix.levine, and if you have something to say, please leave a comment.